Welcome. Can everybody hear me? We're a little scrappy with the technology today, so I'll explain more shortly, but welcome in and thank you all so much for joining us.
We're about to start. Oh, let me just make sure that I'm still.
Is it unmuted? Okay, cool.
Welcome to When Sisters Speak. We finally made it. Wow, this was a journey, but I'm grateful that you all are here with us, that you're on community with us, and that you're on moving with us through all of the things. As you can see, we're a little scrappy today, but hey, there are more people in the room, you're in the room, and we're still gonna have this incredible conversation, and so I'm just grateful. To the folks who are online, if you can't hear at any point, if you need us to slow down, if you need us to be louder, please say so in the chat. Somebody will let us know, and then we will adjust accordingly. We're a little bit, we're being a little bit creative. Lost some of our equipment, but it doesn't matter because you all can hear us and see us, and that is the most important. So again, welcome to When Sisters Speak. My name is Cheryl Capone, she, her pronouns. I am Senior Project Manager with the Chisholm Legacy Project, and we are here representing the Global Afro-Descendant Climate Justice Collaborative. And so today we'll be having an incredible conversation with sisters from across the diaspora as well as our allies to talk about the very specific experience of gender and climate justice and the work that's being done by frontline communities and by our wonderful sisters on the ground. So yeah, I'll give everybody the opportunity. Okay. I'll give everybody the quick, again, be distracted, so I have everything on my phone. But I'll give everybody the quick opportunity to introduce themselves, their name, pronouns, where they're from, and their organization. And we'll start at this end of the table. As in that, yes.
Aloha, Musliman, everyone. My name is Kara Habola Robles. I'm from Hawaii, but I'm here with the Tishman Center. I'm one of the EJ Disrupt Fellows. I am out of my great-grandmother, my grandmother, and my mom. I realized that I'm the first generation of Filipinos to not live directly under martial law. So this moment for me is not so much a moment that I'm afraid of, but a moment that I'm thinking about as my turn to be tested, my commitment and my courage. I am here as part of the feminist movement in Hawaii, and I was the founding chair of our Missing and Murdered Native Hawaiian Women and Girls Task Force for the state of Hawaii, as well as the executive director of the Commission on the Status of Women. So it's an honor to join you and hopefully discuss our connections with Hawaii and your work.
Hi everyone, my name is
Hopefully you can all hear me. My name is Dr. Francis Roberts Gregory. I use our pronouns. I'm here representing a couple of different coalitions. I am on the board of the HBC Green Fund. I'm also part of the Global African.
Francis, sorry, I don't know hear you.
No worries. So, there you go. That's big. So representing, I serve on the board of the HBCU Green Fund. I'm also a member of the Global Afro-Latinx Climate Justice Collaborative. I'm a steering committee member of the Feminist Agenda for a Green New Deal, and I'm also a member of the Humanized Triple C Women and Gender Constituency, where we do feminist advocacy at the UN Climate Issues.
Buenos días, saludos a todas, bienvenidas, gracias por estar acá. Mi nombre es Katia, my name is Katia. I work in Puerto Rico, principally supporting farmers on whatever needs they do. We are aiming for Buen Vivir, which is a global South philosophy that breaks with the capitalist mentality of using and producing constantly. Right now, we're working on a land access campaign. We've led that along with Francisco and Nestor, who are supporting me here, and we have been able to raise about $4 million and 300 acres for our farmers and our fisher folk in Puerto Rico. So that is one of our victories there. So I'm looking forward to listening and learning from all of you. So thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Andrea Coutinho Lobato. I'm from Brazil. I'm from Rio, but actually live in Brasilia, in the center of Brazil. I'm a journalist and leads an organization titled Brazilian Center for Climate Justice, which is a civil society organization focused on research, climate education, communications, and political instance. I'm so happy to be here again because I think we are building a very beautiful pathway in terms of narrative connections, and I work for Black people. It's all about Black and Afro-Descendant people in terms of reparation. So my main topic is global climate reparation, especially for Black women, Black kids, Black youth, and Afro-Descendant and everybody's in diaspora. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the invite. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mariana Williams. I live in Florida, originally from Jamaica. I represent a number of organizations and institutions. I'm with the Global Afro-Descendant Climate Justice Collaborative, also with the Institute for Law and Economics, and my two colleagues are here from Jamaica with this. And also I am associated with the Caribbean Philanthropic Alliance, which has been very much persistent in the Caribbean, focusing now on, and maybe those have been talking a little bit about it, generating women entrepreneur to be part of the climate space and part of the climate value chain globally. I work on climate finance, gender and climate change, climate and trade, a whole number of issues which we could talk about, and I really look forward to the dialogue here today. Puerto Rico, Brazil, the US, HBCU, Green Fund, and Philippines, and Ireland. Yes.
Yes. Give it for our running one. All right, so we're gonna get right into it because we want to make sure that we've got everyone's time and we have a lot to discuss. Before that, I'm going to give you all a quick grounding as to what the global Afro-Descendants are and why we're all here today. So the idea behind global Afro-Descendants is we understand the fact that both racialized and gendered experiences contribute to how people are experiencing the climate crisis, right? And so we connect environmental justice activists across the diaspora, whether that be on the continent, whether that be in the Caribbean, whether that be on the US or in Latin America, et cetera, to show the fact that there are so many things that connect us in our specific regions, but there are also so many things that we're all specifically experiencing. In addition to that, we are also fighting to get recognition at the UN level as a recognized constituency, in the same way that Indigenous people are recognized, the same way that youth are recognized, the same way women and gender are recognized. We believe that Afro-Descendants deserve a seat at that table and to be globally recognized as this constituency. So those are the two things that we're working on, that we're fighting with, and all these people sit at different intersections, and so we're gonna dive more into their individualized work, what it is that they're seeing in frontline communities through the organizations and the different ways that we can work together, because we know that women and femmes have always been at the forefront of solutions, and these are all solutionaries sitting right before you today. So with that, let's get into it. My first question is for Princess. And so understanding that Black women and femmes have always been at the forefront of resistance and care, as I said. How do you see this legacy shaping today's climate justice movement?
Thank you so much for that question, Cheryl. Big question to answer. So first, when I introduced myself, I didn't actually introduce my communities, and that actually shapes the answer of this question. So I am the descendant of formerly enslaved peoples that were kidnapped to coastal North Carolina as well as coastal Georgia. And so my people are the cousins, religious sisters, for example.
Princess, speak up, I'm so sorry.
Sorry. And so my people from coastal Carolina as well as Georgia are the cousins and religious sisters of communities that are in this region. And so we have a long history of resistance in the United States, particularly because we were forced to live in a country or a nation state that was built upon our labor, but does not respect our not only bodily autonomy, but our sovereignty, and definitely doesn't care about our lives. And so we have a long history of feminist, Black feminists, and even eco-womanist resistance. We have folk who were fighting against colonial terror in partnership with indigenous communities, and as indigenous folk from the continent, making sure that our stories and our memories and our ancestors were still represented. We also have folks who fought during the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, folks who were heavily involved in the architects of the environmental justice movement.
A little louder,
Sorry, the environmental justice movement, as well as more recently the energy and climate justice movement. So I would say that there would be no environmental, climate, or energy justice movement if it wasn't for the work and vision of Black femmes. And also I would say faith-based leaders from the United States. A lot of us have been leading these fights from the pulpits. And I would say more recently, we're leading these fights from historically Black research institutions. So I'm an alum of Spelman College, which is a historically Black college for women of African descent in Atlanta, Georgia. And so there's a long history of environmental justice and climate justice organizing in the Southeastern United States. And also, I would say, I would be remiss if I didn't mention a lot of the visionary work of Black femmes in Gulf Coast, Louisiana. And so I lived in New Orleans for 5 years. And so folks such as, more recently, I would say, Colette Battle, what is now known as Taproot. Also, Dr. Beverly Bright, Deep South Center for Environmental Justice, and more recent folks such as Jessica Dandridge with the Greater New Orleans Water Collaborative. They are constantly fighting these fights and thinking in intersectional ways. So I'll leave it there so I can hear from my other panelists.
Thank you so much. And to Andrea, I wanted to ask about some of the most urgent and the most urgent gender impacts of climate change that you're witnessing in your community, both with you being Black and also women.
So just a quick questions. How many of you have been to Brazil before? What are you? We are up, I think now 47 days until COP30. We are already now months now. So I think Brazil is living a huge moment because there is a research that says that just 71% of populations do not know what is COP, but 78% of the entire population knows that COP would be hosted in their country. You know? Can I repeat? 71 do not know what's COP. What's COP? What's climate conference? I don't know. But 78 knows that we're gonna host a COP in 47 days. I'm just starting with this information because the way that we face climate justice in the concept, in reality, and in our words, in our reality, it's totally different. So I'm from a community in Rio de Janeiro, which has a river that in all rain every time that it rains, we have to face the river, and it's a dirty river, it's not a clean river. We have to face this river to go to the bus stop, to go to the supermarket, to go to schools or other place of work. So there is a reality in Brazil that media do not shows, and poor people knows, but they can't speak or fight for climate justice academically because they are facing with their bodies. So we are facing with our lives. And once I'm not living there anymore, my mom lives there, my family is still there. The name of my city is São Gonçalo, in the região metropolitana do Rio, metropolitan region of Rio. And I'm just sharing this because it's just one more story inside of the climate justice needs and stories. And I've been educating the last years through stories and storytelling because the way we speak in terms of media, social media, or here in this table, it's truly fundamental for the change we are pursuing in terms of climate justice. So as a journalist, I'm seeing that what COP30 means to media or what COP30 means to population in Belém is totally different. People in Belém are suffering because they are hosting a big event and they don't have infrastructure for this. The houses are more expensive. A lot of infrastructure, it's a mess in the city, and COP is arriving. What does climate justice mean for everybody, for peripheral people, for Black people, for women in Belém? And so, as a huge country, as many of you already been there, not sure yet, I would love to extend later about the places. But what I wanna just highlight to begin with, it's about what kind of storytelling we are telling in terms of climate justice. We are telling about women, we are telling about infrastructure, urban climate justice, or about COP30. And in terms of narrative for media, what does intercede to the media, to the like big media as the New York Times or Globo in Brazil? So the different way we say can be different in terms of the destiny of the achievement and the results that we are pursuing here. So recently I joined into the Global Council of Adaptation of COP30, and our mission now is to raise a new concept of adaptation. So in Brazil, we are calling of anti-racist adaptation, and there is a network of a lot of civil society organizations trying to implement this new concept, anti-racist adaptation, not just adaptation, because it's what the favelas, quilombos, and peripheral areas need, an anti-racist adaptation. And that's why when you ask your question in terms of community and climate justice in Brazil, we cannot go on without saying an anti-racist perspective for everything, for adaptation, for transformation, and for resilience. And I just want to share with you that in Brazil, more than 56% of the population is Black or African. So it's a Black country, but this is not what the media shows. We see other bodies, we see other imaginary. So what's our imaginary of climate justice? Beyond the disasters and beyond the climate policy, so what kind of people we are seeing? That's why I love the topic of this panel. When we say when sisters speak, so what we are sharing in terms of justice and in terms of alliance. Because now the concept of climate justice and environmental resilience in Brazil is more strong. But what we need is more. It's like alliance, a coalition, it's like a global south initiative that could not just invest in the concept, because no matter in terms of who is suffering, but more to fight for international policies and global cooperation that centers racial justice just for female, Black, and anti-racist perspectives. It's just to begin with, I just put on the table here.
That was a very good beginning and very good grounding. Cara, I have the next question for you. One of the things that Andrea was talking a lot about was narrative. And I'm talking about how narratives are hijacked. I know a lot of times in the land of Hawaii, people look at it as a vacation spot, as just a place to like go and hang out when there's a whole occupation right? That's occurring, that's happening in your land. And so can you tell me a little bit about how the narrative has been taken and what it is that people in your community are doing to take it back?
Hello, can anybody hear me?
Yeah, I
You
think
can't.
only we can hear on the line, but they're muted. The room's muted. I'm sure it was an accident.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We're working on it right now. We set a phone on the table. We're trying to unmute it. It's not giving me the option to unmute from this end. So give us a few moments and you should be able to hear clearly.
Thank you.
Over
Thank you all.
2,000 homes burned, 3 times as many people perished as compared to the Los Angeles fires, unfortunately. And that was a direct result of the fact that the sugar plantations thefted water. And when sugar no longer became a profitable industry because of the power of labor organizing, they pivoted to resort development. And so now the largest consumer of water in the state is a US Marine Corps golf course. And tourists consume more water than Hawaii residents. And so that is really the underlying cause of the Lahaina fire. But as a result of the organizing, some folks in this room were able to use that moment to try to build sustainable unity. You know, so like I said, I'm a mom. I do cry in the Target parking lot. But as a mom organizer, when I'm crying in the Target parking lot, I'm usually listening to a speech by Kwame Ture or another revolutionary who is reminding me in one of my favorite quotes that, you know, unity isn't an emotion, unity isn't a vibe, unity isn't a feeling, it has to be built. And so from the fire, we were able to win the biggest amount of housing back from the short-term vacation rental, occupy a beach. Lahaina Strong occupied the most popular tourist beach in Lahaina in order to make that housing victory. And I was also, I forgot to say in my intro, we did the very first forensics of the impacts of a United States wildfire on women and girls to date. And the impact of a US wildfire on gender equality. And we hope that it's a blueprint for all of you. So those are some of our victories so far in shifting the narrative of Hawaii.
Thank you so much. And to Katia, like, one of the things that I really appreciate that Kara named was the military. And was the fact that the US military is seen, you know, in our community as this like big protector and as this person who's doing all these things for us and for our freedom, but they're moving to away and attacking other people in the process. So can you tell me a little bit about land and territory defense and how it connects to gender justice and climate justice? Because I think it's something that maybe people are not like actively putting together in their mind, but it's something that is absolutely connected.
Oh, boy.
I know that's a big one. And like, if you can turn it around.
That's huge. I'm getting into almost the 5th floor, so I'm between technology and writing. I will ask for your patience. So So, the first thing is recognizing that I am also a descendant of enslaved people, but as a Caribbean mix and a light-skinned Caribbean mix, I have to recognize the positionality and privilege that that brings within the Caribbean mixture and the our Latin countries, particularly because of the anti-Blackness racism that exists within our countries, and that has to be spoken, that has to be denounced and underscored every single space that we inhabit. And speaking from that positionality, there is, of course, and we've already talked about it, there's an uneven burden on Black bodies and Black women's bodies. We talk about walk to water, that's usually by women and Black women. We talk about the third and the fourth shift during the day, that's also by us women, by Black women, Black bodies. And when we talk about working towards our land rights, those that are most risk of being displaced, those that are actively being moved, the farms that are currently being used illegally to do the land lumber exercises that the military has started to do under Trump, under the DOW, now the DOW. All of those are in majority Black bodies and farmers or excluded people within Puerto Rico. So what we're doing right now is launching precisely a land access mechanism, a land access campaign in which we're looking at several things. The first one is that we're thinking of our right to loss and damages. The Caribbean was split. The Caribbean is a mix of so many different cultures, but we were always one home. And that's one thing that I love about our sisters and brothers from Hawaii. That is one home, the seas and many, many rooms. And the sea was our connection. And that was stolen from us. That was taken, ripped from us. We were separated by language. And one of the things that happens is that the empires that were the owners of our islands, those then inhibited us from connecting with each other. Just as recently as Maria happened, when Fiona happened, all those hurricanes, Dorian in Bahamas, we weren't able to help each other when we are one family because of those empires. So the right to loss and damage, our right to be represented, like you said, Andrea, at those forums is essential. And one of the people that is training and learning about rights to land and how to defend farmers and their right to land is Licenciado Francisco Vargas Alcántara. He's been working with us on that platform. There's another one, it's the right to remain. How we formalize our access to land and how we protect each other by collective land tenure. That has been an essential part of the land access campaign. The other one is our right to migrate. Like the land access campaign focuses on the fact that we're not talking about just the land within one of the islands of Puerto Rico. We're talking about the islands of the Caribbean region. And this is our home. We should have the right to travel freely to our neighboring highways. And lastly, our own research, our own data, our own indicators. Why? Because in the 2015 drought, that was the worst drought in many places within the world. They bumped us with Latin America, and the black representation on TV, that's light skin, that's not who we work with, that's not who we are. And in that, there was no impact on food production thanks to the drought. It was minimal. But then I do a specific case study and I think of Black bodies, or I think of Haiti, I think of the Dominican Republic, and there were massive losses in production. There was massive dependency because of that drought. But all of that gets made invisible because we don't look at the Black bodies and what they are facing. We're not putting that front and center. So from our perspective, one of the things that we're thinking, and I'm gonna close this out with the land access campaign. This morning, we were at a panel and this person was speaking for the US government and she was saying how we're gonna make it and we're gonna survive. You're in a room and all of you are gonna be in a room where they're gonna discuss whether it's 1.5 or 2 degrees. We blew that up a while back. And even that 1.5 is already condemned to this 300,000 of us in our countries, in our islands, in our tropical region. It's already giving up on certain people, on certain bodies, and that's us. that's not being given word to, that's not being brought to the forefront. And that's one of the things that I was thinking, that this type of project and of initiative is so important to finally give a voice, give a face, and denounce the fact that not only do we need to be at the table, but the results and the impact of what has been climate justice and environmental racism for so long needs to be centered, like you mentioned, through racial reparations.
Period. Pay us what you owe and cancel all those debts. So next to Mariana, you spoke a lot about, Katia spoke a lot about being in the room, and these like tangible things. Mariana, you've been in these mechanisms, in these rooms, in these spaces for a long time. And understanding all of the things that you've seen throughout the years, the changes that you've seen, but also realizing the real realities of Black feminists and of feminists across our diaspora. What are some concrete things, concrete policies, concrete practices that would shift power and resources towards our leadership in climate solutions, that would give us the ability to make these kinds of decisions that are addressing our needs?
Right, so a lot's been said from Hawaii, from the south of the US, Puerto Rico, and Brazil. A couple of things, as I was individual, I was thinking of things. I'm also a member of Southern Climate and Environmental Network. That really links climate justice work across the southern US, including the Carolinas and other places. So and I just want to pull that into the table, that there are lots of people working. And that one thing that you should be aware of is a lot of the defunding or the cutback that Trump has done in terms of the Inflation Reduction Act and taking away the money are impacting Black communities that lack water, access to running water. They lack various mechanisms that we take for granted daily. And that this has really knocked money out of the mouth of those people. So we have a lot of organizing to do within the US in those contexts. Even many people, women, Sharon, certainly, that's what Chisholm works a lot on with frontline communities to talk about what that's doing. I also want to flag that within the Caribbean, I'm from Jamaica, so I don't live there on a daily basis, but I keep in touch. We also have the issue around beaches. Beaches in the sense that there's a whole beach campaign to liberate beaches. And as a normal Jamaican person living in the community, the tourist has more access to all of our beaches. I think I saw statistics, almost 95% to 97% of the beaches are not available because the hotels build the beach and it's enclosed and people don't have access to the huge beach campaign going on by civil society. But also in terms of how climate is impacting agriculture, fish, like the capacity of fishermen and women to be able to get fish, to be able to sell. All of those things are impacting day-to-day life. We also have the extractive industry, the bauxite and aluminum industry that have left gorges of dugout places inside Jamaica where when it rains, you have red mud, red dirt, people's houses get flooded. So there are many things that are happening in the Caribbean. Besides, you hear a lot about sea level rise. You hear a lot about existential crisis, but the day-to-day impact when you begin to drill down on what is happening to people's lives, you don't really see those on TV, you don't really hear about those. I'm glad you flagged that 1.5 because in the negotiation, we have paid so many times for 1.5. We have sacrificed climate finance, we have sacrificed a whole bunch of things on the promise that 1.5 will be maintained. And so all of those things that we have sacrificed, what we go past 1.5, but we're still talking about 1.5 and it's a real thing. And we're still in COP 29 and in COP 30, people again be trading off gains to maintain 1.5 and well below 2 degrees. When we know that the necessary fossil fuel phase out is not real. I think what's important for us as activities is the fund for loss and damage that has been implemented. And they're the high level event today, I think, at the UN for the fund for loss and damage. And we need to begin to start charting our loss and damage. What is the loss and damage, tangible and intangible, across our community in the way that you've done after the fire. I think that many communities many of our negotiators come into negotiations without any idea as to what loss and damage is in a real sense of what they need. Climate finance is a significant part of that. And even though we complain and we argue for more, we argue for 5 point something trillion, there is still money around in the Green Climate Fund. And that we need to make sure that money gets to community. Right now, a lot of that money is sitting in UNDP, FAO, WHO, those are all implementers. That money should be available to communities at community level. And so we need to advocate for those money and for community groups to have access. And there are people working to make sure that the fund for loss and damage, FR, the fund responsible for loss and damage, have windows that are accessible by communities. And that you don't have to go to UNDP, you don't have to go to FAO or WHO or IMO, that those money should be directly accessible to your community, to each of our communities here. And those are significant amount of money. It's not enough, but it's significant and it's there. So I think we need to better educate ourselves and our communities and to push for our governments and our senators and our congressmen in the US for access to that. I also belong as the Chisholm to the Shift Us. Shift Us is the campaign, it's not here right now, announcing it's a shift in the US to be able to honor its climate commitment and honor its climate debt to the developing countries and also to shift in other developed countries to move and honor their climate debt. In terms of, we now have a petition going that when it was delivered to Lula, the president of COP30, signed by over 300 organizations, asking and demanding that Afro-descendants and indigenous people be upfront at COP30 and that there's space created for us. And as Carol said, we're also working. There are now 2 groups going on. The Disability Caucus is also pushing to have disability people represented as a constituency in the UNFCCC. And within that Disability Caucus is a tremendous amount of Afro-descendants. I was on the call, and people from the developed countries from Latin America, the Caribbean, who are disabled, these people with disability, who have no voice, right, in this process. So, and so likewise, as Afro-descendant communities, we're organizing across the globe with our African colleagues. Global Afro-Descendant is a project of Pan-African Climate Justice Collaborative, which is a Pan-African organization with over 1,000 organizations across Africa, and the Children Legacy Project. And we just want to push this project to bring in the voices and concerns of Afro-descendants. The African Union has identified Afro-descendants as its 6th region, where 5 regions recognized. So they made it that Afro-descendants, all of them will constitute the 6th region. And there was a meeting last week in Addis for the Africa Climate Week and Africa Climate Summit. And the big topic was again reparations, climate reparations and reparations to colonialism and slavery. And in our region, California has been leading the fight for reparations. Now we're trying to link reparations and climate reparations because climate change is a product of colonialism, imperialism, extractivism, plus of the attack on this century. So they're interlinked. The slavery, enslavement, colonialism, reparations are also a part of that. And to the extent the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the authoritative body that informs the negotiation that we partake in the UNFCCC, in this last report, identified for the very first time, it's been doing this since 1992. And for the very first time in its report, it identified colonialism as a key driver of climate change. So everywhere we have this, we now have the ICC has given their judgment on climate change, right? And that has been led by many Caribbean and particularly Caribbean sisters who have legal training, who have been leading that fight. So we have many different strands of activities. And part of that is to do the educational. It's what Afro needs to do, is what all of us here needs to just be aware of where it is that we can do the work and be aware of what's going on and communicate and build in for our communities to be able to access those resources that exist, even while we push for bigger resources. We all agree that $100 billion, $100 million is not enough. And we know that the African group and the Caribbean group have argued that what we need, based on research, once blue sky based on research, is at least $5 trillion to meet adaptation, loss and damage and mitigation across the global south. So it's a lot of work to be done, and each of us are doing what we can. I'm really excited about how you're looking at adaptation, because adaptation is also a growing thing. We talk about maladaptation is now a big thing, recognizing that a lot of money is put into adaptation, but the adaptation project that's on the ground haven't considered what's happening to Black people, haven't considered what's happening to Indigenous people. So the projects end up hurting them. These are projects meant to keep you alive, to protect you, but because of the lack of consideration of gender, of race, of ethnicity, we end up with projects that have been put on the ground in our communities that actually worsen, create new problems, or exacerbate existing products. So we have a whole bunch of discussions about adaptations, and you see a lot of different adaptations. So I like this anti-racial push for adaptation that fits in with this whole, both the practice literature and the academic literature are saying that adaptation has been failing. And so maladaptation is a huge big thing. And then there's a whole bunch of different ways that we're looking at adaptation. I'm also a mindful person. We're talking about mindfulness and adaptation, mindfulness of climate, mindful economics. So it's a whole bunch of things, bringing in different people who have not been in part of this discussion. And that's part of why we haven't solved the climate change. 30 years, and we haven't bent that emission curve, right? As of 30 years. Part of it is, it's been economic thing that economists have been weighing in on it, and they talk about things that are not critical to what we're going to do. And so you need to widen the portal, bring in civil society, bring in Afro-descendant, bring in people with disability, bring in social scientists, bring in mindfulness people, bring in Buddhists, bring in all kinds of people who really are on the ground and seeing the reality of what's happening. And that's how we will address this climate. We're not going to solve it in that room. That's with negotiators who have no idea even what's going on in their country. They come unprepared. I'm very sorry to say that. They come without any understanding of what's going on the ground in their country. And so if you can't defend it, then you get pushed. And then you're fighting about 1.5. What does 1.5 mean? Yes. Right? Anyway.
Because what the world does look like, and they're having decisions about things that are happening in rooms, and it's actually contributing to the lives and deaths of real people. They're talking, these are real people's lives that are being impacted. I want to take a moment to bring up right now, like I said, global Afro-Descendant Climate Justice Collaborative. So what are some of the things that we are actively and concretely doing? Our sister talks about the land rights and that's what's on. We would absolutely love to connect with you all to see in which ways we can integrate that kind of stuff and refer to this campaign within this document. So essentially, as we're moving towards COP30, understand that the UN, et cetera, are all just mechanisms, but even in those mechanisms, access matters. And being able to have these kinds of conversations and be at this table matters. So we have a policy platform and draft. It's a living, breathing document that has come out of several conversations. Was first birthed in Bonn with a group of immigrant rights activists and migrants. And we have begun to look at this document and to edit it honestly together to say, okay, these are the needs, the desires, the wants of Afro-Descendant people. And so because this is a gender, I'm just talking about gender climate justice, this is the specific portion that is referring to that. So I'm gonna need everybody to put their thinking caps on a little bit. This is interactive, yes, you're gonna get a little bit familiar with the people next to you. And so I want everybody to take a minute to look at a couple of the points. This is gonna be like 10 minutes with the people around you. Pick two of the bullet points and discuss them in your small groups. I don't know if y'all can see. I should have printed these, but say we dark on that. Yeah, that's like that. Oh, you can't see. You can't see. Okay, I can also share the link, and I think I'll put this up as a keyword. That's get the correct appearance. I'm sorry. Yeah. Keyshawn, do you think you can make this into a QR code for us really quick? But in the meantime, while he's doing that, for whatever you can say, just so we can be mindful of time, but we don't have a lot of time left. There are people who are online virtually, by the way. Shout out to the virtual people again. Let us know if you can't hear, and they'll put you into small groups. But yeah, I want everybody to take 2 of these and to look at them and to read them and to see like what's missing from these. What points do you think that needs to be added? How can we make these more full? How can we make these to target more people? What language makes sense? What language doesn't make sense? Can we make something more specific? Can we make something more broad? So yes, your hands will be part of this, because this is a working document that should be written by the people and for the people, and yeah, this is specifically for gender. So we're working on the QR code. If everybody can just take, it's 2:55 now, this is going to take about 10 minutes. If you can turn to 3 or 4 people around you, take 2 bullet points and discuss the points, and then we'll share back. Does that make sense to everybody? And if you can't see the document, I will actually just come close to you and send it to, yeah. Again, we're doing a real organizing here, you feel me? So. Does that make sense to everybody? Does anybody have any questions? And if you need the link, just look at me. Look at me, and I will come over and send it to you. I see back in the back, that's what I'm gonna send it to you. All right. Are you discussing the links? So you can take any 2 points, for example, so for gender transformative adaptation. Our sister group was talking about, Andrea was talking about adaptation and about how they have new definitions for that. So if there's something that she can add, then she can input it. If there's any kind of language that makes sense, she can get it. Analysts, you need to bring the lines to us, but she didn't do it. Yeah, I'm sending this. Okay.
All right.
What are you working on right now?
So I'm a couple things. But for HBCU, we're developing this youth led network, sustainable African network. And the same way to global activism, which they say, trying to build networks, and build relationships. And then also supporting projects, applying for funding and some projects in the projects like that. Then also working on the sustainable policy interventions and then just engagement research. That's because I think people think of climate action, they don't think of like researchers and as I'm a climate action center.
Very so rather I like learning movements. All right.
Very
right there. Are we up to? You said it's not live. It's the only live fire shooting range in a residential area in the entire United States. That's crazy. Wow. It's very loud. Like, if you come to Hawaii, you should go there. Yeah. So you have the fun that does.
So HBC Green Fund has existed for 10 years and we support sustainable projects with students at college in the US and we have development and all that, but we also support youth led projects.
Wow.
Yeah, that's so been for, and they've been stacked at I've been a part of it for 2 or 3 years. I think that every that's something in the last 7 years. I don't have one. But we're developing a new youth wing of HBC Green Fund that will, which is basically be sponsored by Savon Sustainable Access Future Network. And so that is
Is it also international?
I would say it's international, Pan-African, it's like transnational, transversal.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of those. And like just trying to create opportunities to live in these spaces so that our voices are heard more, but also to continue to support grassroots projects, like that's what from the ground. Yeah, and the research, because we know that when you have a lot of that are not BIPOC led, they get focused. And then the research is really participatory. Yeah. And also like we're researchers and we're from the community that we're researching. So how do we like help elevate this work so that we can trying to be a Yeah, that's a lot of. It is. It's like to know.
But you're infiltrating, basically overarching infiltration.
Yes, and everyone doesn't do everything. Like some people do more research, some people do more grassroots, some people are like activists, some people are like the UN, that's my state. People are different, like one of my co-conspirator, she hates to do it there.
Relatable.
Yeah, and so it's like everyone does their thing, but together are impacting everything. That's what we're working on. And then in terms of me being like an academic researcher, feminist activist research for like 15 years. And I never had the opportunity to publish because I should say that I published I did a lot of elder care. My ex father, I did a lot of post-work care. So when you're caregiving, it's very hard.
Oh, there's no way to write.
It's no time to write. Yes. So I have like all these writing projects on the back burner and also looking for, I was supposed to work with the state department. Energy policy work. Also this is really space.
Yeah.
So that's what it's
Also had.
yeah, we've all been in that thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So what was the latest like research that you did?
So actually, so my dissertation focused on Black and Indigenous women led organizations in Louisiana. So that's why like I know like the Deep South Center and
Sorry.
Elementary school.
My partner.
It's fine.
A spy?
Right, it's not,
Who?
but he doesn't have to be picked.
No.
Well,
Oh, good, okay. No, they have a major performance coming up, so. Okay.
That's so cool.
Alright.
But yeah, I was because I felt like at least when I started my PhD in 2013. At that time, when people were talking about climate change, like my father's pregnant and Black was it was we were not people could be that solution. So my work as an anthropologist was like intervention, say, hey, we have to be for the pretty sciences, and they're actually very intersectional. You might not always consider like at the time, they're like, oh, that's housing and that's transportation.
Yeah, they don't see it through our screen.
Exactly.
Sometimes EJ, it's like, oh, that's not a type. Yeah, I
Exactly.
still get that, it's like, place.
Exactly. So I was more like documenting, identifying and documenting and describing. These are all the different kinds of this. Very broad. Yeah, right. So that was great. And then I realized a lot of folks were supposedly doing this that were so, so popular. Because they're like all they were. Really different. We have a lot of shared struggles.
Yeah.
And so that's when I joined the Women and Gender Constituency event.
Oh.
As well as the research in the city, I started like following specifically there's many negotiation practices. I follow gender negotiation practices that are actually how do you integrate gender into the event. Gender advocacy. We talk about finance. Just like inserting, because oftentimes we see here like this side, or like you just call it, impacts all the. So that's like just like documenting, because I realized we're working hard and we're so much that we're not really documenting, and now with a lot of projects on the internet because of safety concerns, and then like in rewrite officially in textbooks and stuff. The movement work we're doing is not being historicized. So part of my role becoming an archivist is like saying like I want to historicize the I understand certain things I know say and toxic and stuff like that. But like we need to historicize this work because we can't just be moving so and they're rewriting history right now as we speak. So they're history from we are learning a lot of it like elementary school. So they're definitely gonna be rewriting and certainly going from there.
Yeah, no, I love that you are there because so like through this fellowship, I really wanted to do as part of it, as part of what we do.
3-minute warning.
In Hawaii, we got a bunch of pure plantations, but they're all really Black.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like they are narrative.
Yeah, and if people actually, like if we actually have an accurate representation of the actual, It's like crazy. What's their tactics and it's
Exactly.
but
I think they, so the resistors of the future, they need our, they need to understand what our strategy is.
yeah. So there's a lot of the stuff that is required, it's like an organization that's lasted like 3 months or something, and like that's so it's like there's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
That's
yeah, I really think so, I think so.
Yeah.
It's just like, I hate, I'm just like, yeah, I want our narratives. And to your point about museums, I kind of got into that, for one, the climate museum here in New York, there's a climate museum here. I saw her earlier today at her climate.
okay.
And there's a whole museum around climate that might be helpful. And then, I have a mentor, a Black feminist South mentor, started a Black feminist archive at University of Massachusetts Amherst. And then another.
People can start coming on back. Come on back. And if you guys can't hear again, tell me, has the sound been working better?
So there are like, yeah, there's stuff, but we're not, it's not organized.
And I was trying to indicate that maybe because like, yeah, there's some like outside like the museum workers or the sippers, like yeah, there's no doubt. Period. And there might be state ones, but like we're trying to create one in Hawaii,
Yeah.
just to get through like this moment and build something better. Because there's still a lot of like subversive like spaces that are black. So I'm not saying that those should be seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's no like,
Yeah.
Okay,
so,
Yeah.
clap one.
Yeah.
If you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear me, do the dance. Hey, okay.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you all so much for being a part of that. So we're gonna do a brief share back situation. Where if you in your group have anything to share back, this is great for that. So I'm gonna walk around from the.
That's my theory, yeah.
yeah.
I'm gonna take this.
A good one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
No, I think you I'm gonna take this one.
Mic check 1, 2. Mic check 1, 2. Let's start. Back here, my back is one sentence to. Who is y'all?
Yes, yeah. Oh, no, I haven't. Been.
So
I've been to, yeah.
More on support gender transformation, adaptation, and mitigation strategies. And we also spoke a lot about ensure equitable access to resources and opportunities. I think one of the areas what we engaged with a lot was just the role of women, especially Black women in the recovery process. Like, you were sharing just examples of what we went read or studied, after Hurricane Katrina, and like the role of women in bringing their families together to make the goal. And the importance of not only lifting that up, but I think another element that Mike actually brought up is like mitigation and adaptation strategies and design aspect of it. And how we don't really think about climate adaptation and mitigation as it relates to like the harm and not considering like, women in the kinds of architecture that we want to kind of or cities or communities we want to build. And those spaces to make, to increase resilience.
Well, this is very close to what I'm doing for presentation right now, which is and basically what sort of cities Afro-descendant people assigned female or in need and what their experiences are in those cities. So this is, like what Jim was saying, I started with reading an article about how cities are designed in a way that are harmful to women.
Right.
People assigned female to birth. And what I'm interested in is talking to Afro-descendant women, people assigned female to birth about their experiences, because it's based on climate change, and that people have a lot of climate refugees and migration. And I guess in the West, that we like they're on the Great Lakes or the East Coast. So women and people assigned from birth, especially Afro-descendants, were not asked what sort of cities they wanted to live in. So I'm just curious about asking that, but I'm also doing this in Brazil as well. That's why I go to Brazil a lot, because I'm interested in what Afro-descendants in the global south do as well.
I think it's really not. Anybody else with the scheme, this side? Moving along to my sisters over here. Yes, beautiful. So we're locked in on, it's the third bullet on the left. Ensure equitable access to resources and opportunity, but we really focused on the last bullet on the right. Support and fund grassroots and business organizations. We spent time just kind of filtering out what we would entertain in this, thinking it was like a trick question, like, what are we supposed to find what's missing? But we ended up on the capacity building part. It's really important that like, how do you go about finding the grassroots organizations and then having funders that can't find them, and then talking about the role of intermediary partners in a world in which they can both be connected. So that's kind of stuff. Capacity building is very important. Yes, everyone knows grassroots organizations, they are strained with that. So having structure, and then support is essential. It's a very important vote. It applies to every organization. That's what we're talking about.
One other thing we talked about is how we resource ourselves, right? And how essential it is for us to be thinking about other organizational types outside of the default nonprofit model, where we can, because we are, I think, largest consumers in the world, in the African diaspora, likely. How do we use that money instead, right? To fund this work.
That's good. There's definitely a lot of questions surrounding sovereignty, what is sovereignty, and how do we resource ourselves so that we aren't looking to outside entities in order to, fund our lives. So that's really good. Come on up later.
Thank you. Each Minville President and CEO at Chicago City Collaborative. I was really encouraged to go. And first, shout out to Chisholm and everybody who was involved in putting this together. And we were giving special shout out for the inclusion of the gender-based violence bullet as something that is really left out. One of the ones that we talked about for a while and something that was missing was the bullet on investing in the gender disaggregated data and research. And with a point really being that adding something about who is doing the research, whether it's HBCUs or how women and FEMs and folks are included in the design of that research, because who is the messenger, who is creating that is really important. And we see, recently, right, like people will start saying, Tylenol causes autism, right? So it's all about who is doing it as also as important as what the results are and how they're being shown. So we're really thinking about how you're doing that. Those sort of things.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much. I'll come to my panelists in a second. Hey, does anybody have anything to say over here? No. Yeah.
I think everyone's conversation is going over the gender disparity. I would just say, I'm sure everyone mentioned the, since has taken office. Okay. And I think that can fall under, ensure equitable access to resources and opportunities. When we talk about the grants and make sure that our people are taken care of, like I said, our people, I mean, like STEM folk, that's, there's still a disparity in equity with the pay. We're also being required at, frequently higher rates. Thank you so much.
To our esteemed panelists, if you all have anything to add to the overall policy, before I ask you guys more questions and open it up to audience.
Yeah.
Because of lots of
Like a.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for being a part of that class. That is important in the new document that will be released by this time that we look to top with a comprehensive list of our policy demands as Afro-descendants. Afro-descendants. And so, yeah, if anybody wants a copy of this or wants to be sent to them, please reach out to me and I'm happy to send it to you. I'm happy to go over it. I'm happy to have conversations about it because it's really important that as many brilliant minds, as many brilliant Black minds and allies as possible are touching, reading, and editing this comprehensive document. And with that, we'll get right back into our panel. Going back and forth on this stuff. Okay, so the last little portion of what it is that we'll be doing is asking a couple more questions about the organizations, about each of our esteemed panelists organizations, some of the work that they're doing in the future, and then we'll also give the opportunity for questions and period. So yeah, I wanted to just kind of ask this to each one of you about what are the most urgent demands that we need to bring into spaces that have all of these decision makers that are making choices about whether we live or die, both as women, as Black femmes, as people who are part of this movement. And how can we better connect our struggles across regions? So as we know, we have here the diaspora, allies who are part of Indigenous peoples who are also part of occupying lands by the US military, by US hands. We're all here, but we understand the fact that colonialism's ugly hands and feet touch all of us as people who are members of the global South and even within this nation of the United States as well. So can you guys talk to me too? It's a two-pronged question. Number one, how can we better connect our struggles across regions? And then number two, what are the most urgent demands that we can bring into these kinds of spaces to have these conversations and to build collective power? I'll start at the end of the table with Cara. And also for the participants online, if you could just say your name before you start speaking, your name and your organization so they know who's talking.
So my name is Cara. I'm representing the Ulana Institute. So I'll answer the first one or the second one first. So the most urgent demand that I would make are one, we need to patriarchy-proof disaster response. First of all, we could not rely on the multi-billion-dollar agencies to do any type of dissection or forensics of what happened after the Lahaina fire. We had to take that on as a grassroots, the only grassroots feminist recovery organization in the entire state of Hawaii, with pennies, right? And we did it, and what we found, we interviewed 70 Filipino women because Filipinos are 40% of the population in Lahaina because they are descendants of the sugar plantation. And so we have this understanding now of what happens to an extremely marginalized working class, mostly renter population that does not have the option of going to the police for gender-based violence also, after a catastrophic wildfire. And half of the report talks about redesign and what could have prevented that. And one of the things that is been protected through the generations by Black women and Indigenous women is midwifery. Decentralized reproductive health care through midwives were what saved women after the Lahaina fire because hospitals became inaccessible and the area became militarized. And so midwives were literally jet skiing in baby formula because baby formula, menstrual products, contraceptives were not pre-positioned at any of the emergency shelters. So that's one thing we know could be designed better. Another thing is, there was just no integration of these global concepts that have been around since, right, like the Beijing Convention, which is gender mainstreaming and gender integration. That is not even terminology that is familiar to people at FEMA and to state and county government officials. I think we take it for granted, those of us who, are transnational, that those are here. And they're just not. So the United States is very backward in terms of gender integration as compared to our so-called, underdeveloped countries like the Philippines that has a GAD budget. That's unthinkable, right? And then the second thing I would say, looking to Nepal, looking to Indonesia, looking to the Philippines, is corruption. How corruption, because of the surveillance and the elites implanted by the United States and supported by the United States, are preventing climate resiliency. So in the Philippines, you might have seen the news of all these protests. 70% of all federal money for flood projects never actually goes into the project. That just goes to corruption. So it is thefted. And in the United States, corruption looks like the military industrial complex. It is the largest theft of our money. $1 trillion is thefted from us and laundered through the military industrial complex. And so without attacking the military industrial complex and recognizing that as a form of corruption, I don't think we can have any of this adaptation that we are so desperate in needing. So that's just, I hope you take some of the lessons from Lahaina. It is meant to be a gift to all of our communities of what will unfortunately happen if we do not, right, patriarchy-proof disaster response. So it was not meant for Hawaii, it's meant for all of you, and I hope that we can connect through it.
Name, organization, speak up.
I know. All right. So my name is Dr. Frances Roberts Gregory. I'm representing the HBCU Green Fund today, as well as the Black Hive, the Movement for Black Lives. So I would say there's so much. So one, in terms of how do we strengthen our movements and build our movements, I think it's really important that we focus on narratives. I know a lot of folks talk about storytelling, but honestly, from someone who's doing transnational, translocal work, we do not all know each other's stories across the diaspora. And it is really hard to unify, it's really hard to work together, it's really hard to resist when we have a lot of misconceptions and stereotypes about each other. I was recently attending the Africa Climate Summit in Addis, Ethiopia, and I met some colleagues from South Africa. And so I was explaining some of the issues we're going through, particularly as Black women. As was mentioned, 300,000 of us lost our jobs, myself included. And so folk were saying, and then a lot of funding was taken away for USAID, and a lot of folks are saying, well, that's probably for the better. It was a tool of colonialism. But we're not thinking about the communities on the ground in East Africa, for example, who are dealing with loss of resources and support for HIV services. We're not thinking about the scientists, the researchers, the students, both on the continent as well as in the diaspora in the United States, who were dependent upon that funding for their work and also for that supported on the ground efforts. So I just think that we have, and my South African colleagues said to me, oh, when the funding was taken away, we were told it's because the Trump administration is going to focus on the folk in the United States. We thought it was a good thing because we were like, yeah, y'all need to focus on what the United States population. I said, no. We're losing education, we're losing healthcare, we're losing jobs. And so that funding being taken away internationally is not supporting more folk here in the United States. And so she was so surprised, she had no idea. And so we really need to share our narratives, but also as a member of frontline environmental, energy, climate justice communities in the United States, we have to make sure that folk understand that the United States is not just a place of milk and honey, and we also have struggles, and that we need solidarity from the global South as well. As we could say the global south within the global north. So I would say that's going to build our movement. I would also say finance, whether we're calling it climate finance, reparations, loss and damage, funding matters and sustainable funding streams. I think my colleagues here were talking about the need to make sure that we're not always dependent on outside entities. That is so important. And I think that until we address this finance issue, we're gonna suffer and we're not gonna be able to achieve our goals collectively. Finally, I would say in terms of demand, we have to demand that we fight fascism, that we fight white supremacy, that we fight ongoing colonialism. If we're not able to have honest conversations about what's happening, we are not able to address the issue and we're not able to build together. And I think that we have people power is real power and we can never forget that. But we also have to recognize that there's concerted attempts to share misinformation and try to ensure that our movements aren't as strong as they are. And also that we don't have ancestors to call upon in terms of strategies for movement strategy in order to continue the work in the future. So we have to share our narratives, we have to archive the work, and we have to make sure that the work is funded. And we have to make sure that the folk who are using participatory, feminist, community-based methods as scientists, as researchers, as nonprofit professionals, that they have the funding they need to continue the work through all types of ecosystems of austerity. So, any thoughts?
Thank you. Katia, del Instituto para la Agroecología en Puerto Rico. Going towards what are our most urgent demands, I think when I think of home, think of the Caribbean, it is Black and it is not Black. It is islands and it's not islands. It is politically dependent and independent. It is economically dependent and independent. It is over 200 languages and dialects. And who gets a seat at the table depends on who's calling the shots. Who gets called Caribbean or not depends on who's convening the meeting. And we need to get rid of that. We are all Caribbean. And the first thing is that we need to be the Caribbean region represented and united as one front. And to us, in terms of survival, that is a critical step. And it is a critical step because it is the region that has fed itself, that has nurtured itself for centuries. And it is only a recent development that we got separated. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about is because it depends so much on who's convening, then when we're talking about accessing the money, we need to make sure that the mechanism and the governance of accessing that money makes sure it gets to all the people that it needs to get to, not a particular person, not a particular language, not a particular favorite island or not, or a particular empire or not. And that is a very important aspect of getting that access to funding and getting that access to money. In the Caribbean, usually we are the least represented at global forums. And yet we are the majority of the islands that have the climate disasters. We're still that majority. Every year we have the heat waves, we have the droughts, we have the hurricanes. And that leads us to, we need that money to create our own structures. We need that money to have our own land, and we need to start building our own government, our own families, reconnecting, reweaving our own families from the ground up. We can no longer depend. Our governments are not, they're not beholden to us. They are beholden to their own oligarchical patterns. Whatever other governments are there do not speak for us. So we need our own structures. And part of that process, and I think it goes very well to what you were saying about how do we connect our struggles. And I think part of what I feel is absolutely beautiful of being a female within the Caribbean is that a lot of our struggles are already connected. Because we have to be connected with our bodies. We cannot ignore, I cannot ignore this damn hot flashes. It is horrible. And let me tell you something, no one warned me about this. I am reaching the 4th floor and no one told me it was gonna suck this down.
Yeah, it is terrible, and then you start sweating out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden you have your period, and you don't have your period, and you're bleeding, and you're not bleeding at random times. All of this are things that we did not talk about at all. And we're designing policy as if our bodies and as if the sea is static. And I think that's one of the things that I would love to see more is that when we're designing, when we're planning for the future, it has to be a moving future. It has to move with our bodies. It has to move like the sea. And that's something that we do not. We build, we write policy thinking of static human beings, of walls, of giving our backs to nature. So getting back to that, and part of the beauty of having money for research and starting to do this data-driven design is precisely because a lot of what our people knew is still there. Our people knew how to survive. There's a lot of cropping techniques, a lot of different survival techniques. There are, when I went to Louisiana, ways to lift your house, ways to move your homes with the sea that we need to recover and recapture. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, maybe sometimes we do, but we definitely need to be able to share those narratives and contextualize those narratives to what we're living now, because we have that knowledge. We've just been cut off from each other. So with that, I think the last thing about connecting the struggles is something that this morning I was talking to Hazel from Ironbound and Maruf here from Tishman. And they were talking about how healing the body, and not just healing after the disaster, but after a disaster, domestic violence spikes up. So we cannot go and, oh, here, get this job. Yeah. Because we're still healing mentally and physically, emotionally, right? And it came to me part of what I learned in Hawaii, which was onipa'a. And holding steadfast. How do we hold each other? How do we create the spaces? And we need the land to create those spaces where we can heal each other or let each other heal. And that is part of having that our own infrastructure. We need to get our land back in our hands and our politics in our hands. So thank you.
I like the idea that you're your organization first. So sorry. Andrea Novak, from the Brazilian Center for Climate Justice, CBJC. I like the idea we are always learning, but there is a need of learning with learning and learning, Because sometimes we are learning something and we already know, but we need to learn in another way. And I'm just saying that because the most urgent need of my community in the country, and I feel like Black people, Latin America, is about capacity building. And I'm saying in many dimensions, because to be here, we all have our capacities, we have our background, we have our experience. But in Brazil, less than 1% of the population speak English. So how could we have one Brazilian here speaking about climate justice? If they can speak English, okay, we can translate. But sometimes we need more independence in terms of capacity building. Then I want to just say, firstly, capacity building for communities in terms of international process, in terms of adaptation, science, economic perspective. So how many of us can speak in different dimensions of the climate justice topics in different points of view? And then the second is if we could shape the climate justice approach for different territories, we have another way also of action plans and capacity building needs and other strategies. What it means? In Brazil, we have favelas, which means slums, like slums, we can translate. And the urgent and the climate adaptation plan for favela is totally different from a Quilombo, the rural communities or beautiful areas. So how can we invest our time with community solutions, but also political public policy in terms of different territories that needs different approaches of climate justice. And if we don't have capacity building for our decision makers, our teachers, our community leaders, and our kids and our youth So, how can we amplify our vision on capacity building to implement and to see our territories in different perspectives? I just want to highlight these two, capacity building and different climate action plan for the territories. Because what we are seeing in international spaces and local spaces as well, it's to understand climate justice with just one perspective. And here, I think all of us are saying about intersectional climate justice. I like this perspective, but it's not enough yet. You said in your last talk about a racial reparation, and not sure if it's an official concept as well, but like, how can we invest in non-intersectionalities to build a greater good for our people and to our people? And this greater good passes through reparations for global climate reparations, but also about capacity building to provide all the knowledge and tools and all the capacity to our people to be here in the United Nations at this table at COP30 and beyond, with more confidence and also with more speech and arguments and real recommendations for a greater future as well. So intersectional capacity building and intersectional climate action plans for the territories.
A lot has been said, so thank you all very much. And I was thinking, we talk about disaster risk need to be identified. And it's really amazing how after 20 years of gender and disaster risk, every disaster is the same thing. What you're talking about is the same thing in the earthquake in Haiti. That women were not getting baby formulas, they were not getting menstrual pads, they were not getting, and every crisis is the same thing. It's not that it's not known. It's a problem of implementation. It's a problem of acknowledging gender and women's needs that are distinct and different. And so, it's a problem. We need to identify where is the blockage going on when the literature, policy literature, the academic literature, all this is known. It's not unknown, it's not new, but it keeps reoccurring every time. And it occurs before where Black people are, where BIPOC people are. So that's something that we need to look at. I think finance, of course, the whole militarization is a problem. And we also need to talk about how do we bring not just capacity building, because I think capacity building is part of UNFCCC and it's been there for 30 years and we still have no capacity, right? It's our defining what it is that we need. Right? What are the capacities in our communities that we need? That means that we actually need to do mapping of our communities, mapping of where the needs are, where the gaps are, where the skills are, where the traditional knowledges are, because our people have been going through many of these things, many centuries and many years. And there are ways that people have protected communities from sea level rise and so forth. I was in Belém for the social summit many years ago, not social summit, World Social Forum. And we were taken to places where people had certain types of grass, certain types of plants that they had built and utilized to protect themselves from water rising. What is happening is that modernity has taken that knowledge and said it's not valuable. Yeah. You need to have someone from Harvard come in. You need to have someone from the World Bank come in. So people get educated out of their traditional knowledge. So we also need to go back and recapture some of these traditional knowledge about how do you deal with environmental degradation, whether you're in a desert or you're in the sea or you're in water. So there's that knowledge, that body of knowledge that we actually need to do. Who is the expert and what are they expert on? And is it useful for a community? It's the same problem, I think, with adaptation, that people come in with these nice adaptation plans, right? And they have a whole way we do adaptation. But does that work in Belém? Does that work in the favelas? So the UNFCCC has entire kits about how adaptation is done. It's not that the knowledge isn't there. It's that some of this knowledge is useless for our communities. And that we need to begin to interrogate what are these things that we are adapting. Are we adapting them because they come from funds funders, private funds, or World Bank funds, or whatever. And I think that's part of what that sensitization, that there is knowledge in our communities, and that these knowledge are valuable, and these people are expert. And we need to build it. Don't mean that we don't need other knowledge, but we need to share and generate those. So I think that's why I would say that we need to be careful of this whole idea of capacity building. Two things they use in the capacity building, absorptive capacity. They'll say, oh, you don't have absorptive capacity because you can't absorb $1 million. And if you come with $1 million and you say you must spend it X, Y, Z,
Like, so
we can't absorb.
Yeah.
But if you say, what do you need? And here is $1 million for what you need, then it will be it. So I think we have to also rethink some of these terminologies that we have inculcated in us and say what it is that we need, right? And so I think we have to domesticate and endogenize and talk to our adults and our elders and really come up with what it is that are useful for community. And of course, I always talk about finance. Finance is like, without finance, you're not going to do anything. And you can do but so much, but to upscale and to scale up, you need the finance. And in some cases, the finance is existing, but it's sitting at the Ministry of Finance. Who sends the negotiator? They don't come back to say what the money is.
Yep.
It's in every government in the UNFCCC, all developing countries have access to $1 million a year. Free. That's not grant. How many of our governments have utilized that for communities? Right, for community needs, and how many of our community people know that we need to go to the Ministry of Change or Climate Change to say, we need that adaptation plan, we need that green climate fund money that you have sitting there. So this dispersion of knowledge, I think is also important, right? Anyway, I could go on. But
Thank you, Martha. That's why she's my one stuck here. We're gonna go to the questions portion. Who has questions? Does anybody have any questions for any of our panelists about anything that they've heard, anything that was said? Just in general. Questions? Please say your name and your question.
I'm Rosalie Hamilton. I am chair of the Caribbean Philanthropic Alliance. It's not so much a question, but just a comment with respect to the important role for financing these very, very difficult challenges that we face. So one of the things we're doing in Caribbean is really trying to collaborate with philanthropic organizations to strengthen the work that we're doing. So we work in a lot of silos within our countries, very busy cross-country collaboration around issues like climate change that affects all of us. And so we're organizing the first philanthropic conference in the Caribbean. And it will take place next month, the last week of October. If anyone can join, we do it. We're particularly interested in getting our brothers and sisters from Puerto Rico and other Spanish and French in the Caribbean to be part of that dialogue so that we can strengthen our capacity to fund on our self-reliant programs. We bring a lot of foundations together. A lot of the corporate foundations do have the capacity to sustain financing on an ongoing basis. Not like project financing, which ends and the organizations get devastated. And so we're working on doing much more lending financing. We have a plan that we focus specifically on lending finance, establishing PPPs, public-private philanthropic partnerships that can really strengthen the collaboration with respect to financing and make it much more sustainable.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anybody else have a question, comment, anything that they would like to add to the overall conversation that's being had? Well, I just want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for being here, for being a part of it. You could have been anywhere else, but you chose to be here today to hear from our wonderful esteemed panelists. Just one of the things that I just want to leave us on here with today is really two things. Number one, we talk about systems. We use the word systems when we're always saying that like they're this huge abstract thing. But the truth of the matter is there are people and individuals in these places that are carrying and upholding these systems. And so I just want to encourage everybody that you are also a person and that the change that you guys are exacting in your communities every single day, in your organizations, et cetera, can and does make a difference. And that the idea is to make you think that it doesn't, but it absolutely is. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so much of an opposition from our forces. And then the other thing I want to do is to thank our beautiful, incredible, wonderful, amazing panelists. These femmes, these women are so. The diaspora is fully present here, our allies are present here, there's indigenous amazing knowledge, as Mariam was saying, the knowledge, we're resistant by nature, our DNA, right? Our ancestors survived the worst of the worst, the most downtrodden of situations, and we're still here. So we know that we hold that ancestral knowledge. We know that we're able to survive. We know that we're able to fight back. And so I'm just listening to all of these women for so much leadership. I'm so grateful to you all. Thank you all for coming for some of you short minutes. That's all. I y'all. Y'all still shut up for us. We always do. Just a little housekeeping. The policy platform is a living, breathing document. I will share it with whoever wants to see it. We can have one-on-one conversations. Let's talk about how you can plug in the global Africa summits, what you can do towards COP30 if you're going, if you're not going, what is your organization doing, et cetera. The one of those in the room. We have some food over there. Everybody's kind of started getting already, but eat some more. We can't take it with us. Hello. Yes.
For your moderation.
Everyone you can say, and oh, Rufus, yeah, Rufus. Okay. Yeah, the pits. Rufus shirt. Oh, stand in front of the table, guys. Oh, maybe hold your here. Your name. Everybody stand in front of the table.